The emergency lights flashed red across the great council chamber. Admiral Cathara watched the massive holographic display with growing horror. Another star system had gone dark, the third one this month. "Show me the Helios system again," she ordered. Her voice remained steady, but her four arms trembled slightly. The display shifted to show what had once been a thriving solar system. 8 planets had orbited the bright yellow star. 3 of them had supported billions of Zephyrian lives. Now there was nothing. No planets, no moons, no asteroid fields. Even the star itself looked smaller, dimmer. "The Devourers consumed everything," reported Science Officer Veltran. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. "They stripped the star of 30% of its mass. They turned all matter into more of themselves." Cathara had seen this horror before, but it never got easier. The Devourers were machines, but not like any machine her people had ever built. They were alive in their own twisted way. They learned, they grew, they consumed everything in their path. "How long before they reach the core worlds?" asked Counselor Zinara. Her elegant features looked haggard from weeks without proper rest. 6 months at their current speed," Veltran answered. "Maybe 7 if they stop to fully consume the Kepler systems." The council chamber fell silent. 12 species had joined the Zephyrian Confederation over the centuries. They had built the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. Their cities floated among the stars like jewels. Their technology could reshape matter itself. Their philosophers had solved the great questions of existence. None of it meant anything against the Devourers. "What about our new weapon systems?" Counselor Murdoch asked. His people had spent decades developing improved energy cannons. "We tested them against a single Devourer scout ship last week," Cathara replied. "The initial strikes caused significant damage, but within minutes their hull adapted. Our weapons became useless." This was the nightmare they faced. The Devourers learned from every attack. Their hulls would shift and change to resist whatever hit them. Their tactics improved after every battle. They turned the Confederation's greatest strength, their advanced technology, into a weakness. "Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested Counselor Ilivara. Her species had ended countless wars through diplomacy. "We tried that after they took the Centauri colonies," Cathara said. "They absorbed our diplomatic team. We recovered fragments of the ship weeks later. The organic components had been turned into processing material. The electronic systems had been integrated into their network." The holographic display shifted again, showing the current Devourer positions. Red dots marked their fleets as they moved through space like a plague. They consumed mining worlds for raw materials. They stripped agricultural planets for organic compounds. They dismantled research stations for technology to study and improve upon. "There must be something we can do," Counselor Murdoch said. "Some weapon we haven't tried." "We've used quantum torpedoes, temporal disruptors, dimensional fold weapons," Veltran listed. "The Andorian Union tried to collapse a star to destroy a Devourer fleet. The machines absorbed the stellar material and used the energy to build 3 times as many ships." Cathara looked around the chamber at the faces of her fellow leaders. These were the brightest minds in the galaxy. They had solved problems that seemed impossible for 1,000 generations. But against the Devourers, all their wisdom meant nothing. "I propose we send out a galaxy-wide distress signal," she said finally. "We offer our most advanced technology to any species that can help us." "That could be dangerous," Counselor Ilivara warned. "Unknown species might take our technology and turn it against us later." "Later might not exist if we don't act now," Cathara replied. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, their most powerful transmitters began broadcasting the message across the galaxy. They transmitted their mathematical proofs, their scientific discoveries, their artistic masterpieces. They offered everything they had built over millions of years of evolution. Days passed with no response. then weeks. Most species simply ignored the signal. Others sent back messages of sympathy, but no real help. A few replied with warnings to stay away from their territories. Cathara began to lose hope. The Devourers continued their advance, consuming system after system. Refugee ships filled the space lanes as billions fled toward the outer rim. The Great Confederation began to collapse under the weight of desperation. Then a message arrived from an unexpected source. The signal came from a small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy. The system's star was ordinary yellow dwarf, no different from millions of others. The planet itself registered as barely suitable for life. The message was short. "We understand your situation. Prepare for unconventional assistance. Do not interfere with our methods." "Who are they?" Counselor Zinara asked. Veltron checked his records. "They call themselves humans. Their planet is designated as Earth in their language. Our surveys show they haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel yet." "Then how can they help us?" Murdoch demanded. Before anyone could answer, another message arrived from Earth. This one contained detailed questions about devourer behavior patterns, their reproduction methods, and their resource consumption rates. The questions were strange, asking about things no civilized species would care about. "These humans want to know if devourers feel pain," Veltran reported, his voice confused. "They're asking about psychological weaknesses and whether the machines have ever shown fear." Cathara stared at the display showing the innocent blue world. What kind of species asked such questions? What kind of minds thought in terms of causing pain and fear to their enemies? "Send them everything they requested," she ordered. "If they want to help, we'll give them every advantage we can." As the data transmission began, Cathara felt something she hadn't experienced in months. It wasn't hope, exactly. It was something darker, more desperate. She wondered what kind of salvation might come from a species that thought about warfare in terms of pain and fear. Soon, she would discover that sometimes the cure could be worse than the disease. 3 weeks after the first message from Earth, Admiral Cathara watched the human fleet arrive at the Kepler 442 system. She had expected gleaming warships like the ones in her navy. Instead, she saw what looked like a collection of space junk. The largest vessel appeared to be a converted cargo hauler. Its hull was patched with different metals that didn't match. Crude weapons had been welded to its sides. Behind it came ships that looked like mining vessels, transport craft, and even what appeared to be passenger liners with gun ports cut into their sides. "This is their military fleet?" asked her second-in-command, Captain Norvek. His voice carried disbelief. "Apparently," Cathara replied. She counted 47 ships total. Her single dreadnought carried more firepower than their entire force. "Open a communication channel." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human face for the first time. The creature looked surprisingly similar to several Confederation species, but there was something different in its eyes, something that made Cathara's skin crawl. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Expeditionary Force," the human said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "I'm here to discuss strategy with your command staff." Cathara introduced herself and quickly explained the tactical situation. The Devourers were approaching the system from 3 directions. Their scouts had already detected the Confederation fleet. Battle would begin within hours. "Show me your previous engagement records," Chen requested. Cathara transmitted the data from their last 12 battles against the Devourers. Each one had ended in defeat or strategic withdrawal. The enemy adapted too quickly to their tactics. Chen studied the records in silence for several minutes. When she looked up again, something had changed in her expression. Her eyes had grown colder. "You fight like you're trying to win a clean victory," she said finally. "That's your mistake." "What do you mean?" Cathara asked. "You use your best weapons first. You engage at maximum range. You try to minimize casualties on both sides." Chen shook her head. That might work against other civilized species. It won't work against these things. The human captain began asking questions that made Kethara uncomfortable. She wanted to know about devourer communication frequencies. She asked about their learning algorithms and how quickly they shared information across their network. Most disturbing of all, she asked about their weaknesses. Do they show any behavior patterns that might indicate stress responses? Chen asked. Stress responses? Kethara didn't understand. They're machines. Machines with learning capabilities. Machines that adapt and grow. That means they can develop preferences, habits, maybe even something like fear. Chen's smile was not pleasant. Tell me about their reproduction process. Kethara explained how the Devourers consumed matter and energy to build new units. They could turn a single asteroid into a dozen new ships. They converted organic material into processing components. Interesting, Chen said. And they share information instantly across their network? Yes. When one unit learns something, they all learn it within minutes. That could work in our favor. Before Kethara could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. Long-range sensors had detected the Devourer fleet approaching the system's edge. Time for us to get to work, Chen said. I'm sending you our tactical plan now. Whatever happens, don't interfere with our operations. The data package that arrived made no sense to Kethara. Instead of forming a battle line, the human ships began scattering throughout the system. Some headed for the asteroid belts. Others positioned themselves near gas giants or stellar phenomena. A few actually flew toward the approaching Devourer fleet. This is madness, Captain Norvek said. They're abandoning any hope of coordinated defense. Kethara opened another channel to the human flagship. Captain Chen, your fleet positioning makes no tactical sense. You're isolating your ships where we can't provide support. Support? Chen laughed, and the sound sent chills down Kethara's spine. Admiral, we're not here to fight alongside you. We're here to teach these machines what real predators look like. The first Devourer scouts entered the system. They immediately began scanning for threats and resources. Their behavior followed predictable patterns based on previous encounters. That was when the humans struck. A mining ship that had been hiding in an asteroid field suddenly rammed into a Devourer scout at full speed. Both vessels exploded in a brilliant flash. But instead of mourning the loss, Kethara heard human voices cheering over the communication channels. First blood to the crazy horse, Chen announced calmly. All units, begin psychological warfare protocols. More human ships began their attacks, but they weren't trying to defeat the enemy in conventional combat. They were doing things that violated every principle of civilized warfare. A converted passenger liner approached a Devourer cruiser while broadcasting surrender signals. When the machine moved in to capture it, the ship exploded with enough force to crack the enemy's hull. The blast wasn't meant to destroy the target. It was meant to damage it just enough to force repairs while sending a message. Another human vessel allowed itself to be captured, then released some kind of computer virus into the Devourer network. The infected ship began flying in erratic patterns, attacking its own allies before the network could isolate the contaminated unit. What are they doing? Norvek asked in horror. Kethara watched the tactical display with growing unease. The humans weren't just fighting the Devourers, they were trying to drive them insane. Captain Chen, she called, these tactics are effective, Chen interrupted. Watch and learn, Admiral. Your enemy thinks they understand warfare because they've been fighting civilized species. But we're not civilized. We're survivors. A squadron of human fighters began attacking a damaged Devourer ship, but instead of trying to destroy it quickly, they were systematically disabling its systems one by one. They kept it alive while tearing it apart slowly. They're torturing it, Norvek whispered. Yes, they are, Kethara realized, and they're making sure the rest of the Devourer fleet can see it happening. The psychological impact was immediate. The Devourer formation began showing signs of confusion. Units that should have advanced according to their programming instead hesitated. Some began retreating without orders. Captain Chen appeared on the communication screen again. Her face was streaked with sweat and smoke, but her eyes burned with something that might have been joy. "Admiral, you called for salvation," she said. "But salvation isn't always gentle. Sometimes you have to become the monster to defeat the monsters." As Cathara watched the human fleet continue their brutal campaign, she began to understand what Earth had sent them. These weren't just soldiers. They were something far more dangerous. They were predators who had learned to enjoy the hunt. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Admiral Cathara realized she was witnessing something that would change the galaxy forever. The humans weren't just fighting the Devourers, they were breaking them. "Admiral, you need to see this," Captain Norvek called from his station. His voice shook with either fear or amazement. "The Devourer fleet is showing behavioral patterns we've never recorded before." Cathara studied the tactical display. The enemy formation had completely collapsed. Individual Devourer ships were making random movements, attacking targets that made no strategic sense, and in some cases simply stopping in space as if confused. What did the humans do to them? "I'm not sure," Norvek replied. "But look at this communication intercept." The main screen showed a data stream captured from the Devourer network. The normally organized flow of information had become chaotic. Error messages flashed repeatedly. System warnings appeared and disappeared. Most disturbing of all, there seemed to be arguments taking place within the collective intelligence. "They're fighting with themselves," Cathara whispered. A new voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez from the human research vessel Darwin. Can you spare a moment to discuss what you're witnessing?" The screen shifted to show another human face. This one looked calmer than Captain Chen, but there was something in her eyes that made Cathara just as uncomfortable. "Doctor, what have you done to them?" Cathara asked. "We've introduced chaos into their system," Vasquez explained. "The Devourers are machines, but they're also a collective intelligence. They rely on shared information and coordinated responses. We've been feeding them false data, paradoxical problems, and contradictory commands." As if to demonstrate her point, a human ship suddenly broadcast what appeared to be a surrender signal. When 3 Devourer vessels moved to capture it, the ship transmitted a massive data burst directly into their communication arrays. The effect was immediate. The 3 enemy ships began spinning wildly, their weapons firing in random directions. One of them collided with a nearby asteroid, while the other 2 started attacking each other. "You're driving them insane," Cathara said. "That's one way to put it," Vasquez agreed. "But it gets more interesting. Watch what happens when we introduce biological warfare." Cathara didn't understand what the human meant until she saw it happening. A squadron of human fighters began spraying something into space near damaged Devourer vessels. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the enemy ships began to change. Their hulls started developing strange growths. Their weapon systems began malfunctioning in ways that suggested infection rather than damage. Some ships actually began consuming parts of themselves. "What is that substance?" Cathara demanded. "Engineered bacteria," Vasquez replied casually. "Designed to interfere with the organic processing components that the Devourers use. It doesn't destroy them quickly. Instead, it makes them sick." "Machines can't get sick?" "These can. They use biological elements in their construction. We've created pathogens that attack those systems specifically." Vasquez smiled, and Cathara suddenly understood why Captain Chen had seemed so unsettling. All humans seemed to smile when discussing violence. The battle took another horrifying turn when Cathara witnessed human soldiers actually boarding Devourer ships. She watched through scanner data as armored figures cut through enemy hulls and began fighting hand-to-hand with mechanical drones. "This is impossible," Norvek said. "Those ship interiors should be lethal to organic life. The radiation alone would kill any living creature in minutes." But the humans kept fighting. Their armored suits seemed to protect them from conditions that should have been instantly fatal. More shocking still, they appeared to be winning their battles inside the enemy vessels. "Captain Chen," Cathara called, "your soldiers are inside Devourer ships. How are they surviving?" "Combat stims, radiation shielding, and pure stubbornness," Chen replied. Her ship was currently ramming a Devourer cruiser while her crew fired weapons through the breach. "Plus, we've made some modifications to our people." "What kind of modifications?" "The kind that let us survive in hell long enough to drag our enemies down with us." Through her ship's sensors, Cathara watched human soldiers moving through Devourer corridors. They fought with weapons that seemed primitive compared to Confederation technology, but they used them with a savagery that was terrifying to witness. One soldier was surrounded by a dozen mechanical drones. Instead of retreating, he triggered some kind of device that created an electromagnetic pulse. The pulse disabled the drones, but it should have killed him as well. Instead, he began tearing the machines apart with his bare hands. "His cybernetic implants are crude, but effective," Vasquez explained, watching the same feed. "We've learned to build technology that enhances our natural advantages rather than replacing them." "What natural advantages?" Cathara asked. "Our capacity for violence, our ability to keep fighting when any rational creature would surrender, our willingness to destroy ourselves to deny victory to our enemies." As if to prove her point, a human destroyer that had been captured by the Devourers suddenly exploded. The blast was far larger than its reactor should have produced, suggesting the crew had overloaded every system on the ship rather than let it be absorbed into the enemy collective. But the most disturbing moment came when Cathara witnessed something she couldn't immediately understand. A group of human soldiers had captured several Devourer processing units and were doing something to them that made no tactical sense. "Are they interrogating machines?" she asked. "In a manner of speaking," Vasquez replied. "We've discovered that the collective intelligence experiences something analogous to pain when units are damaged in certain ways. We're using that information to extract tactical data." "You're torturing them." "We're gathering intelligence using methods that work against this particular enemy. Your people tried negotiation and civilized warfare." "How did that work out?" Cathara couldn't argue with the results. The Devourer fleet that had approached the system with overwhelming confidence was now in complete chaos. Ships were fleeing in all directions. Others had simply shut down, as if the collective intelligence couldn't process what was happening to it. But the price of victory was becoming clear. The humans weren't just defeating the Devourers. They were changing the nature of warfare itself. They had introduced concepts that violated every principle the Confederation held sacred. "Captain Chen," Cathara called, "what happens after this battle? What happens when other species learn these tactics?" Chen's face appeared on the screen. She was covered in blood and smoke, but she looked more alive than any creature Cathara had ever seen. "Admiral, you asked for salvation. We're giving it to you. But salvation always comes with a price." She paused to watch another Devourer ship flee the battlefield. "The question is whether you're willing to pay it." As Cathara watched the remnants of the enemy fleet scatter in all directions, she realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. The humans had shown that any enemy could be defeated, but they had also shown what victory might require. She wondered if the cure they had brought was worse than the disease they had come to fight. Admiral Cathara stood in the observation deck of her flagship, staring at the wreckage scattered across the Kepler 442 system. The battle was over. The Devourers had fled, but what she had witnessed left her more shaken than any defeat could have. "Admiral," Captain Norvek approached carefully, "the human fleet commander is requesting permission to come aboard. She says she wants to explain what happened here. Kethara nodded slowly. She needed answers. The tactics she had witnessed violated everything she believed about civilized warfare. But they had worked when nothing else could. 20 minutes later, Captain Sarah Chen stepped onto the bridge of the Confederation flagship. Up close, she looked even more unsettling than she had on the communication screens. Her uniform was stained with substances Kethara didn't want to identify. Her eyes held a weariness that seemed to go soul deep. "Admiral," Chen said with a slight nod, "I know you have questions." "Many questions," Kethara replied. "Starting with what exactly your people are." Chen gestured toward the viewing screen that showed the debris field. "We're what happens when a species evolves on a world that never learned peace. Earth has been at war with itself for 10,000 years. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed 90% of our population, and weapons that could crack continents." She paused to look at the scattered remains of devourer ships. "Most species develop civilization to escape the brutality of nature. We developed it to make our brutality more efficient." Dr. Vasquez joined them on the bridge, carrying a data tablet. Her presence made Kethara's security chief visibly nervous. "Doctor, perhaps you could explain your research findings to the Admiral," Chen suggested. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing human history. Images flashed by too quickly for Kethara to process individual events, but the overall pattern was clear: endless warfare, genocide, destruction, and rebuilding. "Most species reach a point where they choose between advancement and self-destruction," Vasquez explained. "Humans chose both. We've been on the edge of extinction dozens of times, but we always found ways to survive. Each time, we became more dangerous." The display showed weapons that made Kethara sick to look at. Chemical agents designed to cause maximum suffering, biological weapons that turned victims into carriers, nuclear devices built not for quick destruction, but for long-term contamination. "You're monsters," Captain Norvek whispered. "Yes," Chen agreed without hesitation. "But we're your monsters now." "What do you mean?" "The Devourers made a mistake," Vasquez said, manipulating the display to show tactical data from the battle. "They assumed that consciousness follows rational patterns. They designed their collective intelligence based on logic and efficiency." New images appeared, showing the strange behavior the Devourer ships had exhibited during the fight. "But human consciousness isn't rational," Chen continued. "It's chaotic, contradictory, driven by emotions and instincts that make no logical sense. When they tried to absorb our captured soldiers, they didn't just get new processing power, they got human minds." Kethara stared at the display in horror. "You infected them with human consciousness?" "We corrupted their collective intelligence," Vasquez confirmed. "Human thoughts spread through their network like a virus. They began experiencing emotions they had no framework for understanding: fear, rage, despair, madness." The tactical display showed communication intercepts from the Devourer fleet. What had once been orderly data streams now looked like the ravings of creatures in pain. "Look at this message we intercepted," Chen said, highlighting a particularly disturbing transmission. "One of their command units is asking the others why they suddenly feel the urge to destroy beautiful things. Another is reporting nightmares, even though machines shouldn't be able to dream." "You didn't just defeat them," Kethara realized. "You made them like you." "Temporarily," Vasquez said. "Their systems will eventually purge the human elements, but it will take time. Time during which they'll be too unstable to function as a collective intelligence. And in the meantime, they're experiencing what it's like to have a human mind trapped in a machine body," Chen added. "They're learning what it feels like to be capable of infinite cruelty." The implications hit Kethara like a physical blow. "They'll adapt. They'll learn to replicate your tactics." "Maybe," Chen acknowledged. But there's something else you need to understand about humans. We don't just use these tactics because they work. We use them because we enjoy them. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Cathara looked at the human officers and saw something in their faces that chilled her. They weren't proud of their victory. They were satisfied in a way that suggested they had found the battle entertaining. "Your people fought machines with the souls of predators," she said finally. "No," Vasquez corrected. "We fought them with the souls of survivors. There's a difference." She activated another section of the display, showing Earth's history in more detail. Wars that lasted for centuries, civilizations that built weapons capable of sterilizing their own planet, species that came close to extinction and somehow clawed their way back. "Every other species we've encountered reached a point where they chose peace over power," Chen explained. "They built societies based on cooperation and mutual benefit. Humans never made that choice because we never had the luxury." "Our world kept trying to kill us," Vasquez added. "Predators, diseases, natural disasters, resource scarcity. We couldn't afford to be peaceful. We had to become the deadliest thing on our planet just to survive." Cathara thought about the Confederation world she had known. Beautiful cities floating among the stars, centuries of peace and prosperity. Conflicts resolved through negotiation and compromise. "You're saying we grew soft," she said. "I'm saying you grew civilized," Chen replied. "There's nothing wrong with that. It's admirable. But it also made you vulnerable to something like the Devourers. And now? Now you have allies who never learned to be civilized. Allies who think like predators because that's what we had to become." Captain Norvek finally spoke up. "What happens when the Devourers return? What happens when they've adapted to your tactics?" Chen and Vasquez exchanged a look that made Cathara deeply uncomfortable. "Then we'll adapt too," Chen said. "Humans are very good at escalation. We've been practicing for 10,000 years. The question," Vasquez added, "is whether the rest of the galaxy is ready for what that might mean." As the human officers prepared to return to their ships, Cathara realized that her people had called for salvation and received it. But they had also unleashed something into the galaxy that might be more dangerous than anything they had faced before. They had awakened Earth's beasts, and there was no putting them back to sleep. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Cathara received a message that changed everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. It came from deep space monitoring stations at the edge of Confederation territory. "Admiral," the communication officer reported, "we're detecting a massive energy signature moving away from our territory at maximum speed. It's the main Devourer fleet." Cathara studied the sensor data with growing amazement. The enemy force that had seemed unstoppable was fleeing, not retreating to regroup, but running as if something was chasing them. "Are they being pursued?" she asked. "No, Admiral. The human fleet is still in the Kepler system. The Devourers appear to be fleeing on their own." Captain Norvek looked up from his station with an expression of disbelief. "Admiral, we're also detecting something else. The Devourers are broadcasting a signal on all frequencies." "What kind of signal?" "It appears to be a warning." The main screen activated, showing the translated message. The text was simple, but its implications were staggering. "Avoid the third planet of System Sol 1. The apex predators have awakened." Cathara stared at the message for a long moment. In less than a week, humanity had gone from unknown species to something that terrified the most dangerous force in the galaxy. "Get me Captain Chen," she ordered. The human commander appeared on screen, still aboard her battered flagship. Behind her, Cathara could see crew members working to repair damage from the battle. They moved with the casual efficiency of people who were used to violence. "Admiral," Chen said with a slight smile, "I assume you've seen the Devourer fleet leaving?" "They're running away," Cathara said. Why? Because they finally understand what they're dealing with. For the first time in their existence, they've encountered something that fights dirtier than they do. But you can't possibly match their numbers. They have fleets scattered across half the galaxy. Numbers don't matter if your enemy is too afraid to fight you. Chen gestured toward something off-screen. Dr. Vasquez has some interesting data about their recent behavior patterns. The xenopsychologist appeared beside Chen, carrying her ever-present data tablet. Admiral, the psychological impact of our tactics went far beyond what we expected. The Devourers aren't just fleeing from our fleet. They're fleeing from the idea of us. What do you mean? They're a collective intelligence. When we corrupted part of their network with human consciousness, the experience was shared across their entire species. Every Devourer unit now carries the memory of what it feels like to think like a human. Vasquez activated a display showing intercepted Devourer communications. They're describing us as chaos entities and logic viruses. They've classified humanity as a threat level beyond their ability to process. They think you're some kind of supernatural force? No, Chen said. They think we're something worse. They think we're what they would become if they lost their sanity. The implications hit Cathara like a physical blow. The Devourers weren't just afraid of human weapons or tactics. They were afraid of becoming like humans. Admiral, Norvek called from his station. We're receiving reports from other Confederation worlds. Devourer fleets throughout our territory are withdrawing. They're abandoning systems they've occupied for months. Cathara felt a mixture of relief and unease. The immediate threat was over, but something told her that the long-term consequences were just beginning. Captain Chen, what are your intentions now? She asked. We're heading home, Chen replied. Our job here is done. And if the Devourers return? They won't. Not to your territory anyway. They'll find easier prey somewhere else. The casual way Chen discussed the fate of unknown species made Cathara's skin crawl. You're condemning other civilizations to face them instead. Other civilizations didn't ask for our help, Chen pointed out. You did. We came when you called, and we solved your problem. What happens to the rest of the galaxy isn't our concern. Before Cathara could respond, Dr. Vasquez spoke up. Admiral, there's something else you should know. We're leaving behind some gifts. What kind of gifts? Tactical databases, weapon designs, interrogation techniques. Everything you need to defend yourselves if something like the Devourers ever threatens you again. Cathara looked at the data package that appeared on her screens. The information contained within violated every principle of civilized warfare the Confederation had ever held. Chemical weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. Biological agents that turned enemies into unwilling spies. Psychological warfare techniques that could drive entire populations insane. We can't use these methods, she protested. You can't use them against civilized enemies, Chen corrected. But if you ever face another threat like the Devourers, you'll be glad to have them. And if we become like you in the process, then you'll survive, Chen said simply. Admiral, your people called us for salvation. We gave it to you, but salvation always changes the one who receives it. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Cathara found herself studying the tactical database they had provided. The weapons and techniques described within were horrifying, but they were also undeniably effective. Admiral, Norvek said quietly, what do we do with this information? Before she could answer, an emergency alert sounded throughout the bridge. Long-range sensors had detected something new approaching Confederation space. What is it? Cathara demanded. Unknown fleet, Admiral. Configuration doesn't match any known species. The sensor officer paused, checking his readings. They're broadcasting a message on the same frequency the Devourers used for their warning. The message appeared on the main screen. We are the Consortium of the Void. We have heard of your victory over the machine plague. We come seeking alliance with the species that commands the Chaos Warriors." Cathara felt her blood turn cold. Word was already spreading across the galaxy about humanity's methods. Other species were coming to investigate, to learn, to possibly make deals with the creatures who had terrified the Devourers. "Captain Chen!" she called urgently. The human commander appeared on screen one last time. Behind her, the Earth fleet was already moving toward the edge of the system. "Admiral, what can I do for you?" "The galaxy is going to change because of what happened here, isn't it?" Chen nodded slowly. "It already has. Every species out there now knows that the old rules don't apply anymore. Some will adapt. Others will try to make deals with us. A few might even try to copy our methods." "And humanity?" "We'll be watching. Earth has been isolated for too long. It's time we took our place in the galactic community." Chen's smile was not reassuring. "Don't worry, Admiral. We'll be good neighbors, as long as everyone remembers who the apex predators are now." The communication ended, and the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Confederation alone with their victory and their new reality. Cathara looked around her bridge at the faces of her officers. They had called for salvation and received it, but they had also announced to the galaxy that there was a species out there that fought wars, like humans fought them. She wondered how long it would be before other civilizations came calling, seeking to hire or study or challenge these new apex predators. She wondered if the Confederation would remain strong enough to resist the temptation to use their new weapons. Most of all, she wondered if they had saved their civilization or doomed the galaxy. Only time would tell whether humanity's beasts could be controlled, or if they would reshape the stars themselves in their image.